Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Alright, another entry here based on your suggestions. By the way, some of the newer suggestions, again I'll mention this as a fair warning. I'll take a look at some of the stuff, but some of the items, if I don't necessarily want to talk about them because they're too risky, then I'm not going to. Like for example, somebody mentioned something about like Mexican witches or brujerias as they're called. That kind of stuff is a little bit way too far for me. It's kind of like when I was talking about very briefly about the skinwalkers. There's some stuff where I don't really want to take a chance, even if I'm talking about it from like an informative standpoint. I don't really want to delve too much into that world, and something involving like Mexican witches, I mean that stuff, and stuff involving just witchcraft in total, that stuff is just way too far. So thank you for the suggestions, but again, some of that stuff I'm just going to leave it on the side and then see if anything else comes along. This one was actually one of the earlier suggestions, and I looked into it, and it's so good in terms of the information that there's actually going to be probably two parts. This one, I'm going to talk about a particular object within a household, but maybe on the second video I'll talk about the actual house itself. There's so much rich information, that's why I'm going to try to split it between two separate videos. So be on the lookout in the future possibly for the second video. The first one, at least, has to do with a haunted mirror. Those of you that have followed my channel know that I love talking about cursed items or haunted items, stuff that is of like a physical object of sorts, because it's so intriguing to see something, and basically it's not it's an inanimate object, but there's still something to it that could make it in some cases be alive. And what I'm talking about is the haunted mirror located at the Myrtles Plantation. So the Myrtles Plantation itself is the thing I'm going to talk about possibly in a second video, because there's so much rich information pertaining to it. This one though just has to do with the mirror itself, and it has a long history. I've heard of this tale before. I've found information on it. I think it's been chronicled in various ghost hunting TV shows, and I've seen those as well. Still a very popular attraction that you can actually visit to this day. If you're anywhere near St. Francisville, Louisiana, then you have a good right there, and you're near the Myrtles Plantation, then you have a very good chance of going inside and then seeing the mirror itself. So what is the history tied to this mirror? Well, the home itself, again, it's pretty haunted, and I'll save the information for the other video, but with the regards to the mirror, it probably is one of the most haunted things within the house itself. And the legend that's tied to it has various interpretations, although there's a surprising bit of information as to how this stuff could actually be false, and I'll explain that here in a few minutes. But the way the legends go is as this, and this, all of them seem to tie to the same area. Apparently this mirror is linked to the deaths caused by one of the slaves that the Myrtles used to own by the name of either Chloe, or in this case I think it was Chloe, like with a CHLOE, or sometimes spelled CLOE. It just depends on the legend itself. She was purportedly a slave that was owned by Mark and Sarah Woodruff, and the way the interpretation goes is she was someone that either Mark was trying to force into being a mistress, or in other cases she was someone who kind of like went about and accidentally learned some business tied to the home itself that she shouldn't have learned. Maybe she was like eavesdropping, or she was leaning in and trying to like nonchalantly trying to hear sensitive information regarding his business. Either way, he got pretty pissed about it. He got pretty mad, and the way the story goes is he kind of punished her by cutting off one of her ears, and that's why later on, in order to hide the disfigurement, she started to wear a green turban. Well, with her having this physical damage and being caused by either by accident, in this case where Mark was trying to force her to be his mistress and she wasn't accepting it, or on purpose with her purposely eavesdropping on his business, she still was not too happy about the punishment, and so she decided she wanted to enact it as a bit of revenge, something to him. And the way the story goes is she decided to create some kind of birthday cake or some kind of dinner of some sort, but she purposely used something that's a kind of a poison of some sort. What this poison consisted of, I don't know altogether, but she made the cake, and the idea was that he was going to eat the cake. But much to her surprise and apparent shock, it turns out that the wife, Sarah, and then also the two daughters actually ate the cake instead. And what had happened was they started to get so sick from the poison that they ended up dying altogether. And so because of this, it was traced back to her, Chloe, with regards to this poison, and then she was either hanged or she was outright thrown right into the Mississippi River where she drowned, and then that was it. That was her ultimate punishment. She ended up dying because of the poison that accidentally killed some of the other members. Although some variations of the story state that she actually did this poison and fed it to the family members on purpose, either out of revenge outright. So instead of just aiming things at him, she also wanted to poison and so in some cases murder the family. And in other variations of the story, she actually did this on purpose because she wanted to come in later on and save them. So she would poison them, and then she had like an antidote or some kind of cure of some sort, but it kind of backfired on her because she didn't realize that she used too much of whatever that poison was, and then it ended up killing them. And so she was trying to have like good graces with Mark and the rest of the family by kind of saving them, and especially after the punishment and humiliation that she had from the family, but it ended up backfiring. So that's yet another iteration of it. And so the way that the mirror is tied to this particular tale, the idea is back then, whenever someone died within the family, all the mirrors were covered up, because the idea was if it wasn't, then people would get trapped within the mirrors. Whatever they had as far as a soul would get trapped within the mirrors. And so throughout all the funeral procession, it seemed like it was forgotten. Like this one mirror was forgotten as far as being covered up. And so because of it, Sarah and then the two children that died ended up being trapped in the mirror. And the reason why people say that is because to this day, and this is why it remains one of the most haunted things within the house, and why so many tourists in particular go see it, it's because whenever you go to the mirror, you can see things within it. You can see handprints apparently on the glass, even though nobody's touching the glass. You can see handprints actually appear on the glass itself. Even when you try to wipe them away, people apparently still see the handprints come back. Kind of like those tales involving one of my more famous episodes with the children's handprints on the railroad tracks, where if you park your car in the middle of railroad tracks there in San Antonio, then you would have something push your car and it turns out there's little prints. Same concept, but here instead it's on the mirror. Also, people report that there's some kind of strange drip or goo of some sort that runs the sides of the mirror, and no matter how many times that goo is cleaned, no matter how many times it's wiped away, it still comes back, it still stays there. Also, and this is a little bit more frightful, people, whenever they stare at the mirror, it feels like something is staring back at them. Obviously, when you're looking at a mirror, you're seeing yourself, but the way that people describe it is this, whatever it is that's behind the mirror, not them, but something else, it feels as if you're being looked at, as if you are indeed being watched from behind the mirror. Not only that, but it takes a more physical point too, because sometimes people say that they can spot figures that are dressed in the old time clothing back then, with regards to like the Victorian age and so forth. Like people can see that old style clothing, and that people can see like soft images, like they'll see what you would basically perceive as ghosts. You would see them there. Sometimes people actually report faces also looking back at them, and then other times people feel like they're like when they take a picture, of the mirror itself, they'll see like that soft white hue of like ghosts and the wisps that are right in front. I think it's called ectoplasm. Like people can see this stuff right in front of the mirror itself. Obviously, it's not there before when they took the picture, but when they actually take it, they see these white mists forming within the mirror itself. Now, as far as all of this information about Chloe, the slave, the wife, the two kids, everything that just happened, apparently none of it is true because there's never been any record of the house owner, the Woodruffs, having a slave named Chloe, or in some cases named Cleo. And in fact, apparently they didn't really own any slaves at all. So how this came to be with regards to Chloe all of a sudden being with the Myrtles Plantation, and then not only that, but having the idea of poisoning the family, or poisoning, in this case, the husband, who knows? But for whatever reason, somewhere in time, someone created this legend, and it kind of grew its legs and grew on its own. Also, and the reason why this is not true, any information I mentioned earlier, is because the wife and then one of the daughters, they were actually not killed. Like, they were not killed by any poison. In fact, they went on to live a longer life, and in that case, the daughter, she went on to live into adulthood. But they were actually killed later on by yellow fever. So they actually ended up dying later on, but not through any kind of poison. And many years later is when it happened. So how, again, all of this information as far as the wife and the daughters was tied to that poisoned cake, I have no idea. But again, somewhere along the line, someone made it up and then tied it to that mirror altogether. But still to this day, some people say that yes, they do see a ghost, and the ghost happens to be someone wearing a green turban, which is again linked to the legend of Chloe, or in some cases called Cleo, again having that green turban to hide the disfigurement that she had at the hands of the owner with regards to her ear. So that's all the information with regards to the haunted mirror there at the Myrtles Plantation. If anyone has ever been there before and visited the mirror and experienced anything or seen anything, it'd be great to hear. Post those comments below. If anyone knows anyone else that has done it, that'd be great to do as well. It'd be fascinating to go there one day. I would love to go to these things and just take a look. I'm kind of a little frightful of it just because I don't want these things, necessarily following you home. But still, it'd be interesting to see the home because there's a lot of history on it. And again, be on the lookout. I may do the second video with regards to the actual home itself and talk about all the haunting experiences that home has had. It's called one of the most haunted homes, if not the most haunted home within the United States too. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.